Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In this lecture, we will learn about the theories of development. Unit number 1, Early Childhood Education. We will discuss this chapter in two parts. In first part, we will discuss about the behaviorist theories, and in the next part, we will discuss about the constructivist theory. After completing this chapter, student will be able to understand the characteristics of developmental stages according to different theorists, and they can be able to compare the views of different theories and how these theories can be used in the classroom and in the learning situations. Theories of development. First of all, the concept of growth and development need to be clear. What is growth? Growth refers to the physical increase in some quantity over time. It includes changes in terms of height, weight, body proportions, and general physical appearance. According to Crow and Crow, growth refers to structural and psychological changes. It is an increase in size or in amount of an entity. It means growth involves all those structural and psychological changes that take place within individual during the process of maturation. For example, growth of a child means the increase in weight, height, and different organs of body and different organs of the child's body. Thus, growth refers to an increase in physical size of whole or any of its part, and that can be measured. Next is development. What is development? Development means a progressive series of change that occur in an orderly, predictable pattern as a result of maturation and experience. There are different parts of growth and development: physical growth and development, social growth and development, emotional development, and mental development. Development refers to the qualitative changes in the organism as a whole, while we discussed that growth refers to the quantitative changes in child's body. Development is a continuous process through which physical, emotional, and intellectual changes occur. It is a more wider and comprehensive term than growth. It is also possible without growth. It can also be defined as the progressive change in size, shape, and function during the life of an organism by which its genetic potential are translated into functioning adult system. So, development includes all those psychological changes that take in the functions and activities of different organs of an organism. Thus, development is a process of change in growth and capability over time due to function of both maturation and interaction with the environment. According to Crow and Crow, development is concerned with growth as well as those changes in behavior which results from environmental situation. As we have discussed, qualitative changes in the organism, it is a continuous process and it is more wider, comprehensive term than growth. Development is organizational. Development occurs due to both maturation and interaction with the environment, as we have discussed. It is continuous process throughout the life and it is progressive process. It brings qualitative changes which are difficult to measure directly. They are assessed through keen observation of behavior in different situations. Now we will discuss the theories of development. There are three main theories of development given by given by different theories and can be classified in three phases: behaviorist theory, maturationist theory, and constructivist theory. In this lecture, we will learn about the behaviorist theory and the different theories that comes under the portion of behaviorism. The definition of behaviorism. What is the behaviorism? Behaviorism is a theory of learning based upon the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning. Conditioning occurs through interaction with the environment. Connectionist or behaviorist theories belongs to the school of behaviorism. They interpret learning in terms of connection and association between stimulus and response. Behaviorism equates learning with behaviors that can be observed and measured. Strong emphasis on the stimulus are given and the response and the relationship between them. They consider the learning is the result of stimulus and response relationship. There are main behaviorism theorists who give the stimulus and response theories and clear the relationship and connection between the stimulus and response. First of all, Ivan Pavlov. Then John B. Watson, he coined the term behaviorism. The father of behaviorism supported Pavlov's ideas and conditioned responses. Through his experiments, Watson tried to demonstrate the role of conditioning in producing as well as eliminating emotional responses such as fear. He studied how a certain stimuli led organisms to make responses, and he believed psychology was only an observation of behavior. Next one is the B.F. Skinner. Radical behaviorism. He introduced and he proposed that all action is determined at not free. Operant response, behavior that control the rate at which specific consequences occur. He conducted a series of experiments with animals. In his experiments, Skinner made use of another different specific apparatus to conduct the experiments. With the help of such experiments, Skinner put forward his theory of operant conditioning for learning, not only the simple responses like pressuring the lever or one or more response, but also learning is more difficult and complex series of responses that we will discuss in further slides. He concluded that unconditioned stimulus is one that unconditionally, naturally, and automatically triggers our response. The unconditioned response is the unlearned response that occurs naturally in the response to the unconditioned stimulus. Further, the conditioned stimulus is previously natural stimulus that after becoming associated with the unconditioned stimulus. The conditioned response is learned response to previously natural neutral stimulus. We will understand the concept given by Ivan Pavlov with his experiment of classical conditioning. Pavlov kept a dog hungry for a few days and then tied him to the experiment table, which was fitted with certain mechanical control devices. The dog was made comfortable. The observer, Ivan Pavlov, himself remained hidden from the dog but was able to view the experiment by a set of mirrors. Arrangement was made to give dog to the food through an automatic machines. He also arranged for a bell to ring every time food was presented to the dog. When the food was put before the dog and the bell was rung, there was automatic secretion or salivation started from the mouth of the dog. The activity of presenting the food accompanied with the ringing of the bell was repeated several times, and the amount of saliva secreted was measured. At several tries or after the several trials, the dog was given no food but the bell was rung. In this case, the amount of saliva secreted was recorded and measured. It was found that even in the absence of food, the natural stimulus, the ringing of the bell, and artificial stimulus caused the dog secrete the saliva that was the natural response. In this experiment, he brings to light 4 essential elements that we have discussed in the previous slide. The first element is the natural stimulus, technically known as unconditioned stimulus. That was food. In the first picture, you can see the unconditioned stimulus, food. This response constitutes the second element, that is salivation, unconditioned response. The third element is the artificial stimulus that can be seen in the second block before conditioning. The natural stimulus was ringing the bell and no conditioned response was no salivation. But during the condition when the bell is rung with the presentation of food, the unconditioned response, salivation, was started. And after the several times the condition is repeated, the bell is rung without food and the conditioned response from the dog, salivation, is started. So he concluded that the unconditioned stimulus with the presence of natural stimulus, the conditioned stimulus, can be caused to create conditioned response. In this theory of conditioning, Pavlov considers the learning as habit formation, and it is based on the principles of association and substitution. It is simply a stimulus response type of learning, where in the place of natural stimulus like food, water, etc., an artificial stimulus like the sound of bell, sight of light, or any definite color, etc., can evoke a natural response. When both artificial or natural stimulus, ringing the bell, and the presentation of food are brought together several times, the dog becomes schooled or conditioned to respond to this situation. Automatically he started salivation. The dog started salivation. A perfect association occurs between the type of stimuli presented together. As a result, after some time, the natural stimulus can be replaced by an artificial stimulus, and this artificial stimulus is able to evoke the natural response. For example, the salivation of the dog in the absence of food or in the presence of bell. Now we can see the classical conditioning, the use of classical conditioning in the classroom. Classical conditioning in a classroom is exactly same as what Pavlov used in his original experiment. There is a bell that rings before the lunch break in the classroom. The automatic salivation and secretion in the mouth of students are started. Except this, in the classroom implication, if the teacher is consistent and if the teacher want to use or consistent with the stimulus, any stimulus, eventually the student will come to learn the behave properly through classical conditioning. If a teacher want to teach a specific behavior to students, he or she can use the classical conditioning in his classroom. For example, before conditioning, the teacher instructs the class to keep quiet and claps 3 times. The class will get quiet, but they will not respond to the clap. They will not get quiet. But during conditioning, when the teacher claps 3 times and instruct the class to keep quiet, they will get quiet. And after repeating the same process several times, she or he can be able to apply this strategy without conditioning. After conditioning, when the teacher came in the classroom and clapped 3 times, automatically the student will get quiet. The teacher need not to be the teacher don't need to instruct the students to get quiet. She will only clap 3 times and the student will get quiet. Now you student will generate or will create your own example of classical conditioning in the classroom. How you can use the classical conditioning in the classroom to teach a certain or specific behavior to your students.